Welcome to Monday's edition of Renew Plus. I'm Pastor Tony. Thank you for joining us again today and for another week. This is week number 8 of our series Highway 316, and I am so excited of the things we're going to be getting into this week and in next week. Boy, I tell you, this is the culmination of a lot of things we've set up into this point. This is coming down to personal life changes right here. This is going to be really good. So without any further ado, I want to start out this week by going to the Gospel of Luke. Luke chapter 15 to begin with. Now, we've already discussed this parable, at least alluded to it to some degree in previous lessons. But, you know, Revelation is progressive. The more you see, the more in-depth you can go and the more things you're going to be able to pull out of different parables and stories and examples in the Word of God. And that's exactly true about this one right here. Now, this is in context of some criticism that Jesus was receiving from the Pharisees, the scribes, and the religious people of the day who, Jesus went and ate with sinners and tax collectors, and they just could not swallow that. But Jesus wasn't self-righteous. He was here to save the lost, save us from our sin, not to go and, develop communes somewhere and huddle up in a corner and then, go through their self-righteous rituals every week. Now, that wasn't Jesus at all. Jesus was all about reconciling the world back to God, and that's what he came for. But anyway, that was part of the context of what he began to speak some parables because of this criticism that he was receiving. Now, he wasn't just trying to defend himself. He was actually trying to open the eyes of their understanding to who God really is. They had a wrong perception, a misconception of the heart of God, and this is really what he was trying to get to. So he spoke this parable, and we're going to get to this beginning with verse number 11 here in Luke chapter 15. This is the parable of the two sons. Now, I know in many circles they call it the parable of the prodigal son, and that's true. The prodigal son was included in this parable, and there's a lot to say about him, but actually this is the parable of two sons. And so we really need to not just look at the prodigal son, but the other son as well, because we're going to find out what went wrong with him and why he wasn't receiving from his father the way he should have been. Now, here in verse number 11, it says, "Then Jesus said, a certain man had two sons." There it is. A certain man had two sons. And verse 12 says, "And the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me.' So he divided to them his livelihood." I just wanted to point that out. We're not going to have time to read this whole parable right here. I just wanted to point out when the younger son came and requested of his father to give the portions of goods that was coming to him, that at that time his father divided to them. Now, who is them? That would not just be the prodigal son, but both of his sons at the same time. He divided to them his livelihood. So the older son was just as entitled to his portion as the younger son did. The younger son took his portion and left his father's house. That was a big mistake, of course, and we know the story from that, how that the prodigal son took his portion and even left the country. He got so far out away from his country that he actually took employment as a pig slopper. Now, according to the Jewish customs and religions, pigs were unclean. They didn't have pig farms on every corner, okay? So he had to get way away from his father's house, not just down the road, but far away. And of course, we know the story of the prodigal son, how he went and wasted his portion that was given to him on riotous living, just wasteful spending. And of course, he had friends that helped him spend that up until it was all gone. And of course, his friends, kind of abandoned him at that point. And he pulled his pockets out one day and he didn't have a penny to his name. And he was a long way away from home and he had no hope for any future in life. So he eventually took employment, like I said, at a pig farm, slopping the pigs. And, he was so destitute and so far down that he began to look at the pig slop, at the stuff he was feeding the pigs, and he began to think, that looks pretty good over there. But there was something that came to him. It said that he came to his right mind. He came to his right mind out there in the pig farm, out there slopping the pigs and looking at what they were eating and licking his chops. he came to his right mind, and he began to recall and remember father's house and even his father's servants, how they had enough and to spare, he said. In other words, his father was so good and kind even to his servants that he didn't just give them just barely enough to keep them alive. They had more than enough for themselves and to spare. They had more than enough. He began to remember that and to remember what kind of father he actually had. And so he devised a plan. He said, I think I'm just going to return home, and I'm going to tell my father I'm not worthy to be called your son any longer because of what I've done. But he says, I'm going to, if you just hire me on as a servant, that would be good enough. I'd be happy just being around you, being your servant and serving in the fields or serving wherever you want me to go. And so he decided, and he went back home, but he was still a great way off from his father's house, and his father ran down the road and met him. Now, his father wasn't there to swing a bat at him and tell him how bad he was and condemn him. His father fell on his neck and kissed him. And of course, his son went through that little spiel. He had been rehearsing, I'm not worthy to be called your son, just hire me on as your servant, return, and I'll return to your house. His father really just ignored all of that. He didn't even give an ear to any of that stuff. What he did was turn around to his other servants. They obviously must have been around with him. He turned around to his servants and said, go bring the robe and put it on his back, and go put sandals on his feet and a ring on his finger. Now, this wasn't any ring. This was a ring that signified he could go do business in his father's name as a signet ring. It was a stamp of that he could go do business in the authority of his father. So what he's actually doing is returning or restoring to his son, this prodigal son, who was not deserving, unworthy. He was restoring to him sonship, full sonship and heirship privileges. Boy, that is just awesome. Now, Jesus is telling us this for a reason. Why? Because he wants us to see the heart of our Father, of his Father. This is the heart of God right here. Not to condemn us, but to save us. To show his kindness and grace and his unconditional love for us. You can't argue with the fact that this father was dealing with this son in unconditional love. And of course, he restored full sonship, heirship privileges, and then he said, we're going to throw a party, so go kill the fatted calf. That's the best meat out there. Go kill the fatted calf. Well, the other son, the older son, was not too happy about this. And so verse number 25 is where I want to pick it up right here. It says, now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near the house, he heard music and dancing. Now, he not only heard the music, he heard dancing. I tell you, you're cutting a rug if you're hearing dancing going on. It's not the soft shoe stuff like maybe I would do. I'm not a dancer per se. Man, I tell you what, they were getting with it if they heard the music and the dancing going on, okay? And so verse 26, so he called one of his servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. Verse 28, and he said, but he was angry and would not go in. Now, why was he angry for? Why was this older son so mad about this, angry about this situation? Well, first of all, it gets down to the root of his relationship with his father. Now, we see him going out in the field serving. See, this is a picture of legalistic, self-righteous religion right here. They're always in the field, toiling, working, trying to earn and serve, but they never actually receive and enjoy what God has already given them freely out of his love and grace. And see, this is a picture of this son right here. This son was out in the field. Why was he still out there? Because he was still trying to earn his father's love, acceptance, and that inheritance. He was not enjoying it at all, even though it had already been given to him the same time as the prodigal son. Now, I want you to see this right here because this is big time. This is really important right here. If we're still trying to earn God's love and acceptance and earn the things of God, we're on the wrong path. We're not on the highway, we're on the low way, okay? This older brother was on the low way. He was not receiving, not enjoying life at all. he was mad. Now, he was not mad because his father did not love him. He was mad because he took the burden of trying to earn his father's love, earn his father's acceptance, and earn that inheritance. And I tell you, when his younger son came home and his father was dealing with him in unconditional love and grace, boy, he thought this was an unjust thing right here. He was mad. He was mad at his younger son for coming home, and he was mad at his father for taking him back in and restoring sonship to him. So it says in verse 28, but he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years I have been serving you. So there it is. Lo, all these years I've been serving you. And he says, I have never transgressed your commandment in any time. Now you could just see that personal pride welling up. This is what I've done for you. I've served you. I've been out in the fields. I've worked my fingers to the bone. I've done all this stuff. I've never transgressed your commandment at any time. He says, but yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. Now remember what the father did for the younger son when he came home. He went out and told his servant, go kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a barbecue, okay? We're going to have steak, filet mignon. And so, but his older brother said, I've been serving you. I've never transgressed your covenant, yet you've never given me a young goat. See, he had basically goat mentality here. A goat is not the choice meat. The choice meat is the fatted calf out there. And he said, you've never given me even, his expectation was so low. And this is what we're going to be talking about this week and into next week, is raising the bar of our expectation, our hope. The thing we've been talking about the last few weeks. Now again, what is hope? That's a confident expectation of God's goodness in our life. We're going to raise the bar of expectation of God's goodness in our life. The problem, the reason we've had such low expectations, like this older son did, is because we think that God is dealing with us, blessing us, going to give us in proportion to the degree to which we have earned it and deserved it. And see, according to what he felt like he deserved, he thought he was expecting a goat. Actually, he didn't even expect that. He said, you never even given me a young goat. But yet, he said, when this son of yours comes home, you killed a fatted calf for him. So let's pick it up from there. He says, you've never given me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. Verse 30, here it is. But as soon as this son of yours, he didn't even claim him. See, this is what religion does. It is pompous. It wants to look down its nose on everybody else. See, people who are self-righteous are also self-condemned. And under that condemnation, they're going to try to condemn everybody else. They're going to get mad when someone else who does not deserve it receives something from God just out of grace. But that is the way God deals with us. He doesn't deal with us according to what we earn and deserve. He deals with us according to His unconditional love and grace. This is why we can get our hopes and expectations up, because our hope should not be based on us and what we've deserved. It should be based on God and His unconditional love and grace towards us. So he says, this son of yours, when he came home, and who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him. So see right here, the father in his grace had fatted calf grace. But this older son had an expectation that was lower than a goat. And it's because he was trying to tie in what he could deserve, earn, and work for to what he was going to receive. See, there's never going to be a spot in your self-righteousness where you're trying to earn and deserve things, where you're putting yourself under laws, rules, religious rules, regulations, whatever it might be. It might not even be the Ten Commandments. It might be some other kind of religious rules or rituals that you go through. When you put yourself under that rather than under the grace of God, you're never going to get to the place where you can say, I've done enough. I have actually earned the fatted calf. Nope. I've actually earned my inheritance and my acceptance with God. Nope. You'll never get to that place, because your good enough is never going to be enough. It's always going to be coming short, falling short of the glory of God. The only thing that's going to raise us up and give us the kind of life that God has for us is when you begin to accept God's unconditional love and grace and mercy in your life, not according to your works. Now, I'm going to have to stop right there. There's some other things we want to get into. I'm going to pick up here tomorrow. But as we go through this, I want you to begin to work this out in your mentality and the way you're approaching God, your Heavenly Father. If you're approaching Him based on your works, then you're approaching Him on the wrong path. Your hope is going to be dashed and destroyed. But if you're coming to Him based on His unconditional love and grace, I'm telling you, you can expect the goodness of God to come to pass in your life. Well, again, that's all the time I've got for today. If you'd like additional materials, go to tonycowan.org. We'll see you tomorrow.